There we go. Mr. Gaddis. All right. Okay.
Nicole, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe so.
Oh, perfect. Good morning. It is now 9:30 and I am calling to order a Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. We will now start off our meeting by having a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for all.
Thank you all for your participation. We welcome you on this beautiful sunshiny day. Our virtual meeting statement has been sent in your packet. So unfortunately, Mr. Parsons, you don't have the pleasure of reading that. We will now have our roll call and certification of quorum. At this time, Nicole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Town of Ashland.
Good morning.
Mr. Hodges.
here.
Ms. Barnhart. Charles City County, Vice Chair Coda. Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll. Yes. Good morning, Mr. Carroll. Mr. Holland.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Winslow.
Good morning.
Ms. Haley. Goochland County, Mr. Lumpkins. Ms. Lascalette.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Hanover County, Mr. Davis. Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Ms. Pritchard. Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Here.
Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Brannon. New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Williams. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison.
Here.
Ms. Jordan. Ms. Lynch. Dr. Newbell.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Ms. Larson. Ms. Robertson. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC Transit System, Ms. Tim.
Here.
Ms. Adams. Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Ms. Dean.
Here.
Secretary of Transportation Designee, Mr. Mann. Mr. Riblett.
Here.
CTAC, Mr. Basham. Mr. Martin. DRPT, Mr. Brule.
Here.
Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Nelson.
And representing Mr. Nelson.
Federal Transit Administration, Mr. Koenig. Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale.
Rika Ruffin on behalf of Ron Tisdale.
Good morning, Ms. Ruffin. And Virginia Department of Aviation, Mr. Burnett. Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. And Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And we will move right into our agenda, starting with consideration of amendments to our action meeting agenda, which is A1. Are there any additions, deletions?
Madam Chair, this is Chet Parsons. We do have one request to take item B2 under new business and move that to our April meeting to consider possible new information regarding stimulus grant funds that may be applicable to the Section 5310 applications. I believe Mr. Brule can address this in more detail with more information during her report later in the agenda. But we do ask to push B2 to the April meeting.
All right. Any other consideration of amendments? And does this moving require action?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. We need a motion to amend item B2 from our agenda this morning.
So moved, Madam Chair. Cynthia Neal.
Pat O'Bannon, second.
Thank you. Moved in second.
And
All in favor?
should we add that it will be on the April agenda? Move it to the April agenda.
Well, we don't know if it's going to be April or May. Am I correct in that, Mr. Parsons?
I think it should be, I think April should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, we will, Dr. Newbell, if you would amend to move to our April agenda.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I would move that item to the April agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been moved in second that we move item B2 to our April agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposition has the same opportunity. So moved. Item A2, which is approval of our February 4th Policy Board Action Meeting Minutes. Are there any revisions, corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
In a second.
Jim Holland, seconds.
Thank you. It's been moved in second that we approve our February 4th TPO Policy Board Action Meeting Minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposition has the same opportunity. Motion passed. Item A3, our open public comment period. Have we received emails, text messages, or is anyone participating from the public with comments?
Madam Chair, we have not received any comments for this meeting.
Thank you. We will close our open public comment period and we will move to the chair's report, which is item A4. And during this time, we have, I stated earlier in our executive meeting how excited we are about the amendment of the budget for New Kent County and our surrounding localities with a closer possibility of widening I-64. And so all of you on here know my passion about that. So I am extremely happy today. Also, I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize our TPO members that serve on our Central Virginia Transportation Authority. It hasn't been too awfully long ago that we made a decision on the hiring of Chad Parsons. And I have to tell you, Ms. Parsons, your efforts in the Central Virginia Transportation Authority as well as TPO is very much appreciated and recognized, sir, along with the efforts of Mr. Thornton chairing the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, and with Nicole, who always does works with excellence, not only with the Transportation Authority, but with our TPO. So to all of you on behalf of this committee, we just thank you for all of your added responsibilities in the manner in which you are performing them. We are so appreciative for your efforts and your degree of excellence in establishing this unknown territory that we're working on. So we thank you so much for that. As we move on, hopefully in all the localities, the increase in COVID vaccines. I know here in New Kent, our citizens are over the moon happy that we have a call center that we have established and they have a person to talk to. I've looked at the news and a lot of the residents in the Chickahominy, as well as in the Richmond Health District, have been getting that vaccine. So hopefully before too long, we can safely move into sitting around that long table and seeing each other's faces again. So I ask that we still continue to be safe and encourage that among our constituents. So we will move on now to item A5, where we will have our secretary's report. Mr. Parsons.
Madam Chair, David Williams, Powhatan. I've joined the meeting. My apologies for being late.
No worries. Welcome, sir, and good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Parsons, we are now here at the secretary's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to highlight, as we do every month, some of the current work efforts that staff is undertaking. I think it's a good place to start with. I think we're getting some feedback. If folks don't mind muting, if you're not speaking, that'd be great. To start, we have a couple efforts underway with our long-range plan, Connect RVA 2045. We do have an adopted set of vision, goals, and objectives for the plan. And we are also moving forward with a project scoring, ranking, and prioritizing methodology that was approved at the January 28th meeting of the advisory committee. So the next steps are to finalize what we're calling our universe of projects, all of the potential projects that may be included in the long range plan. And after that finalization in the next, probably in the next week, we will begin testing those individual projects and starting to develop our prioritized ranking. That will probably take, I believe, through the end of April to finalize that analysis. And we are looking forward to bringing back that proposed constrained plan, meaning it's financially accountable to the advisory committee and eventually to the policy board and the TAC. The next item in the work efforts, I wanted to raise your attention to the hyperlinks that are in the agenda packet, 2 for the Ashland Trolley Line Trail and 1 for the Ashland Complete Streets project. This is some of the work that staff has been doing to start to tell a better story about the work that we do at Plan RVA and the TPO. The 2 links for the trolley line study go to story maps that have been developed, which are narrative examples that incorporate lots of graphics and maps and text to both tell the history of the trolley line and also talk about some of the designs that staff is working on with partnership with the National Park Service and the local steering committee. The regional bike ped plan is moving forward, and we are planning on developing a level of stress mapping system for this bike ped plan, which will fold into our long range planning effort. And we're very excited about this update. We've talked about it in the past. This hasn't been updated since 2004, so it's long overdue. And the bike ped plan for the region is going to be a major resource for stakeholders and community members moving forward. There's a lot of activity, as the chair mentioned, in terms of subcommittees and different committees and Cvta support and other things. Some of those committees are highlighted in the current work efforts for your information. And I think in particular, the public transportation work group is one of our newer groups that is now serving as a steering committee to assist GRTC in the development of a regional public transportation plan. And that's connected to the Cvta as well. So there's lots of ways for our staff to support regional planning, and this is just one of those illustrations. Next, we can move on to the work program status report. That's in your agenda packets as well. And again, this follows the new format that we've set up, where you have individual work tasks, and at the top of each task report, where we talk about individual work that was completed for the month, we have a budget summary, which goes from left to right, showing the estimated budget for that task, what was billed per month, the total funds expended for the year, and then a reference to the actual work program itself, if you wanted to dive deeper into what the task entails. I'd be happy to take any questions on either the current work efforts or the financial report at this point. Thanks.
Madam Chair, this is Julie Tim, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Julie Tim with GRTC, and I just wanted to call out the work that Chad and his team have been doing and the Transportation Working Group to support us in developing the regional transportation plan. The collaboration has been very helpful and has brought in the staff members from multiple jurisdictions to really help define that. We're in that public process now, and just wanted to say thank you to Chet and the team for all the work they've been doing.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Newbell?
Yes, if Mr. Parsons would, under the summary, the work task table, give me just a brief overview or direct me in terms of our efforts relative to public outreach and equity analysis.
Mr. Parsons?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Newbell, that's a great question, and it's something that we are doubling down on as much as possible. We have, as of this fiscal year, we have a new public engagement plan for the TPO that has been put in play. Well, it was actually pre-COVID, but it's new, and it's something that we are trying to follow across all of our different programs and projects. We are currently under review with VDOT for our Title VI program. And we have been working hand in hand with VDOT over the past few months and are expecting a report back from them, I would hope, in the next few weeks. We had a call yesterday with Mr. Riblett and others about that Title VI report. And that is going to be coupled with later this summer a new federal recertification review with Mr. Duran and our friends at Federal Highways. So I think that this year we're going to be given additional guidelines on recommendations to improve our processes. And I think staff is finally attuned with the needs that we have to do internally to better our engagement process and policies. I think a larger effort, as many of you know, Plan RVA now has solicited proposals for an on-call consultant arrangement to assist with public engagement, with marketing and public relations, and making sure that we are able to involve our stakeholders and partners as much as possible. So I think the TPO looks forward to being able to use that on call to help assist with our efforts in public engagement. I think the last thing to note is that we did have intentions this fiscal year of hiring additional staff to support public engagement and having essentially a point person on staff that could coordinate comprehensively our outreach efforts and methods to get people involved, whether that's eventually in-person meetings and coordination with community groups, all the way through to website improvements and social media and other types of outreach efforts. We are still hopeful that can happen either later this year or in fiscal year 22, and we are trying to include that in our work program. So as long as as the way forward is clear, we hope to have that additional staff support in place soon as well.
Thank you for that update.
Are there any more questions, comments for Mr. Parsons? Okay.
Madam Chair, I did want to turn the podium over to Barbara Jaycox from our staff, and she was going to share a legislative update.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here with you this morning. I don't get to see you all enough, so I'm really glad to be here. I have been participating in the APA Virginia chapter weekly calls on the General Assembly. Thank you for putting that up. And this is essentially my talking points right here. It has been an interesting session, a short session, as you all know. We've been led by Eldon James, and Joe Lurch of VACO is a frequent contributor. Of course, with it being a short session with one special session tacked on to it, which just adjourned on Monday, there were only half the number of bills that are typically introduced because there was a limit on the number of bills that could be introduced. And of course, that it did adjourn on the 1st, and action by the governor on bills that go forward is expected by the 31st. They'll reconvene at a veto session on the 7th of April. So I'm just going to quickly go through. There were 5 House and companion Senate bills related to transportation. HB 2054, I've kind of tag teamed these with key terms: transit-oriented development, which is great to see that they're adding, reducing, modifying, or waiving local parking requirements or ratios to the strategies that can be included when certain larger localities, now that's the key, is who are these larger localities, consider incorporating strategies to promote transit-oriented development in reviews of their comprehensive plan. Now, the second, HB 2071, Resiliency. This got a lot of discussion this year, and I was part of these calls, so I heard some of the sausage making. The original intent was to get the resiliency factor built into the smart scale funding program, but it is now back to a more limited view. They've decided that was too complicated. This bill will require the Commonwealth Transportation Board to determine whether a project has been designated to be resilient. And of course, Chet and I talked about what is the definition of resiliency. We have researched that if anyone would like to know. But they should consider it when establishing the statewide transportation plan, and importantly, the Commissioner of Highways to ensure that it's incorporated into design standards for new construction projects. We're doing a lot of work in resiliency as part of our long-range plan and considering standards that relate to resiliency as well. Another very key topic of discussion is equity and environmental justice. And this HB 2074 addresses that, where it establishes an environmental justice working group within the executive branch that's to direct all the secretaries to designate at least one individual to be part of this working group. And they're asking, they have a 5-year plan that's outlined. The first year to be focused on air quality monitoring practices. And public participation plans, to Mrs. Newble's question about involving residents of environmental justice communities and fence line communities that are affected by covered agency action. I think it's important to note that, this was also a cognate Senate Bill 1318, and APA Virginia has requested that the language be inserted to clarify that the environmental justice provision would only apply to local comprehensive plan updates in accordance with Section 2232 of the code, not routine amendments. As our localities know, with zoning cases come often amendments to the comprehensive plan, and that would just be unwieldy. So we're looking at the traditional 5-year updates as being a time when we would be focused on environmental justice as part of the planning. Bike safety got a lot of discussion at the General Assembly. This is commonly called as HB 2262, the Bicyclist Safety Act. And they reached a compromise by taking out the authority of bicyclists to treat a stop sign as a yield sign. So what in effect has come out of this is allowing the driver of a motor vehicle to change lanes when overtaking a bike, and then also that they leave 3 feet to the left of the overtaken vehicle for the bicyclists, and that it removes the limitation on riding 2 abreast. So that does help with bike safety, which is very important. And then Cvta, HB 1926, the bill sponsored by Dolores McQuinn, adding the executive director of the Virginia Port Authority or his designee as a non-voting ex officio member of Cvta. So those are the transportation bills from this year. There's lots of other relevant planning legislation that we can go over. 3 dealt with energy storage, a lot of tree and conservation related bills. Again, environmental justice outreach with environmental permits, carbon sequestration, and a DHCD housing study. Each of these are included in this whole packet. I think the relevant, I think it is interesting, the energy storage and revenues that are allowed by the localities from solar, as well as, making energy storage comparable to how that we treat solar with taxation. Tree provisions focused on the environmental, tree replacement, conservation during redevelopment. I think it's time for us to be thinking of this as being more proactive in protecting trees, existing trees in development, as well as replacement. I know the standards right now are fairly low. Affordable housing with the HB 2053, looking at, I think I read somewhere yesterday that we're 3 million dwelling units shy of having the available supply of just market rate housing, which has a stair-step effect on affordable housing, making it the crisis that we have in affordable housing even more prominent. What I like about the study committee is they have to report out no later than November 1st of 2021. So I think we'll start to see some more aggressive, more proactive, affordable housing provisions. The environmental justice, HB 2021, it removes an exemption for applicants for a permit to operate a new captive industrial landfill or a new construction, demolition, debris landfill from certain provisions related to new landfills. I think that's a very important provision. And HB 2266, this also garnered a lot of attention. It's in response to COVID, making more flexible local special events licensing. If a local locality passes an ordinance, they will be able to allow outdoor dining and beverage consumption in a more frequent manner as we see open streets and other opportunities in response to COVID. Now that we're coming up on the anniversary of our shutdown next week, it's been very important that localities have that flexibility. There is legislation, Senate Bill 1274 for wildlife corridors to respect them through the Wildlife Corridor Action Plan, respect them in other planning efforts. Some additional GIS data through Senate Bill 1290 through Conserve Virginia, which is, I know our environmental planners are very happy about having more quantified be used to justify conservation efforts. Another big win, I think, for the consumer, Senate Bill 1389, that requires flood risk disclosures for buyers in real estate. A dwelling unit that has suffered repetitive risk loss has to be disclosed to purchasers. And that's very strong language that has been absent in the law. The Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, for which I think I looked at our localities, only Richmond is eligible for as a above average physical stress, would be eligible for this additional funding, or 50%, it's a matching fund for addressing Chesapeake Bay standards. So that is in essence, it's all right there in front of you if you want to download it from the website. Would be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes. I think.
Go ahead, Celeste.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Everyone wants to speak at once, right? It may be too long of a conversation for this call, but I'd really like to have more information on resiliency. So if you've got any documents or information you can provide me, I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. We certainly can. We're working very hard on that through our LRTP and our rural transportation advisory committee as well. We'd be happy to provide.
Right. I appreciate it. I understand the plain meaning of the word, but what does it really mean, right?
It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Yes, ma'am.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
And Madam Chair, that was my same question, so.
Okay, very good. I'll be certainly happy to provide that. I mean, the definition in this particular bill, I did write it down. Resiliency means the capability of a transportation project or strategy to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, or recover from significant multi-hazard threats, including natural disasters, recurrent tidal flooding, permanent flooding resulting from sea level rise, and extreme weather events with minimum damage to the health and social, environmental, and economic well-being of the community. Now, how you measure that, we are looking at, in the rural program, we are looking at frequent flooding of roads that cut off populations to emergency services in particular, because that's the only way in to their neighborhood. We're looking at, in the coastal communities, particularly extreme weather events and sea level rise. So those are all factors that we're sharing with our rural technical advisory committee folks, trying to give them the tools that they need to be able to respond and plan for alternatives in the future.
Ms. Jaycox,
yes.
Page, how do we get a copy of this? Is this available online or your?
I believe, yes, I believe Nicole posted it on our website. Nicole, is that correct? That's where it is.
What specifically are you referring to, Barb?
These top bills.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. They are already on the website.
Thank you. But I'll follow up on the resiliency as well. So thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments of Ms. Jaycox? If not, we thank you so much for the legislative update. At this time, we'll have our Cvta update.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I don't know where to begin. There are so many things happening with the Cvta right now. We have active finance and technical committees. The finance committee is working right now on many things, including beginning a draft budget for next year. We're already talking about fiscal year 22. So the Finance Committee is considering that. And I believe the next meeting is next week. Be happy to, Mr. Pearson, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you want to highlight that the Finance Committee is focusing on, I'd be happy to do that. The Technical Committee is meeting right now, or is meeting next week as well. And they are talking about project prioritization, much like we are doing with the TPO and our long-range plan. So staff is looking forward to any overlap in those processes that might help to make decision-making easier. The Technical Committee is also looking at project accounting to simplify the language, to make sure that the funds that are being collected through the different revenue sources are being used for transportation projects and other purposes as outlined in the state code. So we are close to having all of our foundational documents in place, which has been yeoman's work since August, and I heartily congratulate all of our committees as well as the authority itself on doing all of the work that they're doing to stand up the authority in its first year. We expect to have all that in place in the next month or two through the work of both of our advisory committees as well as all the different subcommittees that have been set up. So many of the members here on the policy board are also serving time, so to speak, on the authority. And if anyone else, I haven't done this in the past, but if anyone wants to highlight any particular work items that's going on with the Cvta, this would be a great time to do it, as long as it's good with you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Parsons, first of all, I don't know if we're doing time on there or not. Sounds a little awkward, but reality is each of our jurisdictions, I believe, should have now received your second distribution. So things are starting to work in that respect, and funds are getting down to the localities. And I would just suggest that the agenda for the Finance Committee is available. Maybe we could make it available on this site as well, this Cvta, and invite people to join us next Wednesday morning for this for the next Finance Committee meeting.
Any other comments, or? And I assume that we can send, if we, in our day of pondering, in our free time, whenever that is, if we have any ideas or any suggestions or comments, that we could forward them to you, Mr. Parsons, or i.e. to Nicole for the Virginia Transportation Authority. My only comment is I hope that the road work that is being done in our localities, that it doesn't then become the responsibility of the sole responsibility of the locality because of the funding to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, that our projects are then kicked to them instead of the commitment that we had pre-Transportation Authority to get the work done. So that's those are the thoughts that I have going around. So if there are no other comments at this time?
Madam Chair, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize CVTA's chairman, Frank Thornton. He's the one that's really trying to hurt all these cats, and is doing a wonderful job in his leadership role there. And he is obviously here with us today, and I want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Always, Mr. Thornton, as a mentor and for your commitment to transportation throughout our region, not just your jurisdiction. So we thank you, sir. Mr. Parsons, did you have something? Maybe, no?
I was just going to reiterate your comment. If anyone has any questions or concerns or wants more information, please reach out to myself or Nicole, and we'd be happy to share that.
And I believe that Supervisor Thornton, I believe he sent out an email stating that if we had comments or wanted a discussion with him, that we could email his assistant. So if you do have those type of comments, I would ask that you would follow up on his invitation. And now is at ground level, it's a great time to express your concerns and your ideas and let them be known. So we thank you, and we thank you for the great work that's happening with our transportation authority in this short period of time and doing our organization. So at this time, if no other comments, we will move on to new business. B1 is our RSTP transfer request, and we find it on page 21. Mr. Butcher?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Hopefully everyone can see the presentation. So this is an RSDP transfer request. Just to give you a little background on the request, the recipient project is the RMT Gate Improvements and New Drop Lot project. This was selected a few years back, so just as a refresher, this project would add a new drop lot outside of the gate to allow deliveries to take place outside of gate hours. And then there are several improvements to the gate itself, including a separate canopy for security, a second inbound scale, another outbound lane, and then some technology and infrastructure upgrades. So the project need, the port has requested an additional 1.162 million. The project currently has 2.2 in allocations. Since this is such a large increase, we thought it was best to bring this to the TPO as part of the increase rather than just processing the transfer. The increase is due really to two different factors. One, as the project has been developed, the port has determined that it's necessary to phase construction to allow the trucks to continue to enter and exit while all this development is happening. And then they looked at the recent bid data. So getting the recent costs for projects has increased everything by 673,000. And then there's an additional 490,000, which is related to tree removal. So there's a mitigation requirement for the trees that are going to be removed for the drop lot. The reason this is coming as a transfer rather than an allocation as part of the regular allocation cycle is that the project is scheduled to start delivery in April. So to be able to try and maintain that schedule, or as close as we can, we need a transfer so that the funding is in place. So the proposed transfer has 5 donor projects. The donors have all agreed to these transfers. These are all after 2008, the funds. So this is funding that would come back to the MPO anyway. We're just speeding up the process by going directly from one project to another. Since this is all previous funding, there's no impact directly on the FY22 to 27 allocations, which is what we'll be adopting this spring. And the donor projects are listed here. So there's an interchange modification in I-64 and Ashland Road. This is Goochland. That project's being moved back to a little bit later. So the funding that is previous years is freed up. The Shockoe Bottom Operations Improvement, this is the city of Richmond. This project's been completed. There are 2 projects in Charles City County, Wayside Road widening and Barnett's Road reconstruction. Both have been completed, and this is surplus funding. And then the final project is another port project, the intermodal transfer improvements. So this is the surplus on that project. Altogether, this would meet the full request and would be able to meet the project need. So the proposed transfers were reviewed by TAC at their February meeting, and TAC did recommend approval of all the transfers as shown. What we're requesting today is the policy board's review and approval of the proposed transfers. The full resolution detailing each of those projects, as I just went through, is included in the agenda packet on page 21. So I'm happy to answer any questions that there are at this time.
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Urbana?
Bannon, yeah. this is quite a large increase over the original estimate. What happened? I mean,
Yes,
that's the
ma'am.
first thing. And the second is, didn't you know there would be something about trees removed? Is this something new? I mean, because definitely there's almost 500,000 in mitigation. I guess it's water quality or something like that for tree removal. I mean, wasn't that taken into consideration when the estimate was done?
Sure. So the original estimate that was provided when the application was selected did not factor that in. There was a cost increase previously, and they were aware of it, but they did not receive final confirmation from the city of Richmond what that amount would be and whether it would apply to this particular project until last year, right before they put in this application and the request, which brought us to this transfer. In terms of the overall process, we have spoken with the port. And we are working on improving both our communication from the TPO with the port, and the port has also committed to improving their internal process to try and ensure that this won't happen again in the future. But yes, this was a pretty big miss on this one.
I think everyone agrees that this is very important, but yeah, somebody needs to double check in the future. I mean, that's what, 1/3 more?
Are you finished, Ms.
Yes, I'm muted again.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or discussions on this? I have to tell you, for me, I have to agree with Supervisor Bannon. It is a little disheartening to have over $1 million miss, and knowing all of the other projects that will be coming forth and still exist. I just have to agree with her and her comments about this. And I heard your comments, Mr. Bushing, about the commitment from the port. But I just ask that that we do a better job, or a better job is done in the estimates. I know we can do nothing about escalating costs, but in the planning and the vision, I think that we can do a much better job. So with that being said, if there are no other comments at this time, the board is requested to act. So I ask if there's a motion.
Madam Chair, this is Cynthia Newbill. I would move that we approve it. Certainly, some of the same concerns articulated, but I think that due diligence has been done to ensure that we can complete this project. So I would move for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Newbill. Is there a second?
Ms. Gunova Peterson, I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that that the transfer request from RSTP be approved. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposition has the same opportunity. Motion is passed. All right, moving on to B2, which has been approved to move to our April agenda. So we will now move down to agency and committee reports, starting with VDOT.
Good morning. Thank you. This is Mark Riblett. Mr. Mann had another commitment this morning, so I'm pinch hitting for him this morning. First, we'll start with the February CTB, CTB update workshop agenda. Link is now, we've made links in the update for you. So if you get a copy of this, certainly the links will take you directly to all the presentations that were made at both the workshop and the action item portions of their meeting. A handful of things that I'd like to share with you this morning is that we had presentations that Deputy Secretary Nick Donahue provided on the Interstate and Operations and Enhancement Program, as well as the project pipeline and VTrans needs prioritization. All that is really going to key us up to be better prepared for having good, solid applications moving forward. And I think will be a benefit to all of the applicants in the region as well. A revised Smart Scale draft funding scenario was provided to the CTB in February. There was a correction that was needed as a result of the environmental factor scoring that had originally been done. The good news is for the Richmond district, it resulted in one additional project being included in the list. All of those updates are included on the SmartScale website, and we did not lose any recommended projects in the funding scenario that was presented to the CTB. Regarding action items at the CTB, there was an approval of the State of Good Repair prioritization process, as well as the FY22 State of Good Repair percentage fund distribution. Approval of proposed amendments to rules and regulations regarding toll and bridge facilities were also approved. It's important to note on the State of Good Repair percentage fund distribution that from a VDOT Richmond District perspective, the Richmond District, along with Hampton Roads, have the highest percentage of the proposed FY22 distribution amounts. So that's certainly good news for the district and for our region. The next CTB meeting will be on March 17th. It will be a combined workshop and action item meeting again that will be virtual. A couple of SmartScale updates. We talked a little bit about the fact that there was an updated funding scenario provided to the CTB at their February meeting. We still anticipate that the normal process will continue and that we'll have action approved by the CTB prior to July 1 with continued outreach ongoing between now and then. The 6-year plan development, which certainly includes the SmartScale additional funding and additional projects that will ultimately be approved, is underway. We do expect that there will be 6-year plan public hearings in all 9 districts. And at this point, the tentative schedule has them occurring between the April and May CTB meetings. This is all a work in progress right now. And as soon as we have any additional information regarding those public hearings, we'll certainly make sure that the TPO staff and you guys are certainly informed about that. We do anticipate that those meetings will be virtual. Official revenue estimates have been provided to the TPO staff regarding the FY22 to 27 budget items. So we're pleased to have been able to make sure that the TPO staff had that. Regarding several studies that are underway, not a lot of changes since our last update to you. One of the things that I think is very key, and it's been a conversation this morning, certainly is the I-64 project. And VDOT is certainly working hard to update estimates and gather additional information to make sure that we know the best available information regarding what the estimates will need to be on those projects. And as a result of that, what you may see starting potentially as early as next month is VDOT doing some geotechnical work on the shoulders of 64, trying to get some soil borings done in order to minimize any kind of risk items that we had factored in relative to those geotechnical elements in our estimates. If we can reduce some of our risk factors, get a better handle on exactly what some of those estimates might be, it'll help us be able to move forward. So we're working on gathering some data. If you see some activity out there, that's certainly why. At this point, we will share any information that we have regarding public involvement meetings on any of those studies, as well as the 6-year plan. As of right now, we don't have any public hearings or willingnesses to hold public hearings scheduled within the next month for the TPO study area. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes,
Pat O'Bannon. What do you mean by no willingness to hold public hearings?
We don't have any scheduled at this time. Certainly normal project development that would potentially have that in terms of their action items and milestones for a project at this point. We don't have any pending out there right now. We're certainly willing absolutely to hold public hearings and have any of that as necessary. We just don't have any postings right now for that.
Okay, it's an unusual term. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Ripley, I would ask that because your presentation has links to it, that we could be emailed a copy of this so that we can click on the links.
Yes, ma'am. We can either do that or Chet, however is easiest for you. We're happy to do either.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, we'll post both the VDOT and the DRPT reports on the meeting page,
Okay,
if that would help.
thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ripley, for your update. Now we will have our DRPT report or update.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm going to start with an item that's not listed on our update, but to follow up on Mr. Parsons' comments about the Section 5310 funding. Last month in my update, I outlined the coronavirus response bill, or CRISA, that includes some additional funding for those Section 5310 programs. There is another bill pending in Congress right now that appears to allocate some additional relief funding that would be eligible for Section 5310 projects. Because those relief funds, both the CRISA funds that we've already received and this bill that is pending right now, both allow us to award funding at 100%, meaning that there would be no local match for that. For those funds, and they also provide us with some flexibility to use some existing residual Section 5310 funds at 100% with no local match. We appreciate the TPO's willingness to defer action on that until we can see the true impact of those of that pending legislation on the program. It is our anticipation that with that additional bill, if it passes, we are looking to be able to allocate or fulfill many of the requests, if not most of them, at 100% funding with no local match. So appreciate the delay in that action item. A couple of other updates in terms of the big Transforming Rail in Virginia initiative. On February 18th, the Commonwealth Transportation Board provided the DRPT director with authorization to execute the final legal agreements for the CSX, Amtrak, and the Virginia Railway Express portions of the Transforming Rail in Virginia project. This is a huge legal step for us to move forward with the acquisition of a significant amount of track, and really is the cornerstone of that Transforming Rail in Virginia effort. So a huge step forward that project that is now nearly signed off on. Moving on to the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, we are continuing to work to stand up the VPRA. The board is meeting on a monthly basis right now. Those meetings are virtual, and the next meeting will be held on March 22nd. All of the work that we're doing on Transforming Rail in Virginia right now, like these agreements with CSX, Amtrak, and VRE, those will all be assigned to VPRA once the authority is fully staffed and stood up. That staffing effort is also underway right now. I'm going to close with a couple of General Assembly updates. In addition to the updates that Ms. Jaycox provided earlier, I did last month brief you on House Joint Resolution 542, which is the Transit Modernization and Equity Study. That's Delegate McQuinn's bill. That bill did pass. We are very excited and to jump very quickly into this study, which is going to be a very comprehensive needs assessment looking at the equitable delivery of transit services around the Commonwealth and looking at how those services can be modernized to provide a high level of service to our citizens. It has a very broad scope, but we will be looking to kick off that study in the next month or so. In terms of budget amendments, in addition to the ones that were mentioned earlier, it was a very big session for transit and rail. We did see $10.9 million allocated in the budget to establish pilot programs for fare-free transit. Of that $10.9 million, an amount not to exceed $900,000 can be used to help us with the cost associated with the transit modernization and equity study. So we are also looking at how that $10 million for fare-free transit is going to be allocated, and anticipate more outreach about how that funding is going to be utilized in the next few months. Madam Chair, that concludes my update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments at this time?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, when do we anticipate the completion of the equity study that was referenced?
So there is a two-step completion schedule that was included in the legislation. Our interim report is due to the General Assembly by December 1st of this year, and our final report is due by August 1st of 2022. So we have roughly an 18-month schedule to complete the full study.
Okay, but we'll have access to the December interim report.
Absolutely. And I would be
Okay,
happy.
thank you.
We'd be happy to provide briefings to the TPO as that study progresses, if that is the desire of the board.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to request that maybe once the interim report is completed, that maybe we could, as a body, receive a briefing or certainly, a briefing.
Okay. And so I think it would be appropriate to, once it is completed, that we will put it on the agenda.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Madam Chair, this is Chet. We'll work with Mr. Brule and schedule that out so that we have that on our radar for future meetings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your update. And we'll be looking forward to the reports from the study, from the equity study. All right, now we will move on to other business. D1, future topics. We've already said earlier that we're going to bring back the FTA section 5310 program in April. And then we move on to topics such in April with the possibility of complete streets guidance and toolbox update, and Richmond Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan update, our CMAQ program update, that's with the Port of Virginia and the City of Richmond and Ride Finders. And then our RSTP CMAQ project prioritization, that's a tentative topic for our April meeting. And then in May, we will consider the draft FY22 Unified Planning Work Program priorities, Connect RVA 2045 update, and our RSTP CMAQ program guidelines update. And that too is, again, tentative. And then June 3rd, a topic of future discussion is the draft FY22 Unified Planning Work Program and the election of our FY22 TPO officers. And so if there are any other items that you would like on the agendas, April through June, please notify Nicole and Ched so that they can be added to our agenda. Item D2, are there any comments from our TPO members that are present? Yes.
Madam Chair, I feel like we need to, in the interest of making sure we've covered all our bases, if it's okay with you, I'd like to go back to item B1 under new business, the RSTP transfer request, and do a roll call vote.
Okay.
We did a vote by acclamation, but I think we just want to make sure our records are correct.
And so we're going to go back to
B1.
Okay.
There was a motion and a second, but I'd just like for Nicole to do a roll call vote, please.
Okay, fine. And so for everybody's understanding, we did a vote, but we'll do a roll call for the transfer for the RSTP. And Nicole, if you would, and that's for the Port of Virginia, and their revised, the revised plan. So Nicole, if you would do a roll call, I appreciate it.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Holland.
Aye.
Mr. Winslow.
Aye.
Goochland County, Ms. Lascalette.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
New Kent County, Chair Page.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Williams. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison. Ms. Jordan. Dr. Newbill.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Tim.
Aye.
RMTA, Ms. Dean.
Aye.
And Secretary of Transportation Designee, Mr. Riblet.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for item B2, RSTP transfer request.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Parsons, for that. Under item D2, do any of the members have any comments at this time that they would like to share, or something you'd like to share with the board? Hearing none. Our next meeting will be April 1st, 2021. And as far as we know right now, we will be meeting virtually. If anything changes, we'll let you know. As always, your time and dedication is more than appreciated. If there's no other discussion, comments for the good of the board, okay, we will now stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.